Good evening, everyone. I'm John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives. And tonight we are doing our regular Thursday trio. I'm so delighted to have the pleasure of bringing to you once more the trio featuring Professor Hamamoto and George Webb. And without further ado, I think we should get started because I've got a lot on my mind, and I bet you guys do too. So let's get started. Who wants to go first tonight?
Well, I'll start out with a thank you to Dr. Hamamoto and throw it over him for being my first guest on the Biden Belt and Road Show. So if you want to search and subscribe, just type in Biden Belt and Road and you're going to go right to the channel. Thank you, Dr. Hamamoto, for a great first show.
It's my pleasure and my honor. And man, that show is going to take off. It is changing journalist history. And I have some suggestions that we'll get into perhaps later that is going to represent a frontal assault on the journalism establishment in the USA. And it's going to depend on your ground level, boots on the ground reportage on that fateful day of January 6, 2021. We're going to build, I must as well just tell you right now.
Yeah, tell me now. I don't want to wait.
All right. I just wanted to build suspense so we can, build an audience here.
Yeah.
But no, and of course, it's with your agreement, right? But we're going to take your raw research, all the graphics, all the different links, and all your timeline, your breakdown, your network analysis, and also that of the research team that was with you, Team W, as well as external sources, and going to write it up, and then I'm going to package it academic style with all the citations, all the footnotes. I'm going to put the little academic polish on it, and I'm going to submit it under your name as the principal author, by the way. I'm going to submit it to the Columbia Journalism Review.
Great.
We're going to see if they publish it, because supposedly they are the academic watchdog of media. So let's see if they really are going to. And it started around 1961, 62, and it sort of established Columbia School of Journalism as sort of the gold standard of journalism training. Obviously, Donnie O'Sullivan is not a graduate from that institution. But this is just kind of my way, I'll tell you the truth, kind of debate the academic establishment for really being negligent and calling to account these entities that are representing themselves as journalistic institutions like CNN and even Fox News. So we're going to submit this to the Columbia Journalism Review, as in Columbia University, as in Bill Barr, as in his father, as in all these characters. What do you think of that, George?
I love the idea, and I can save you a lot of time because the Wall Street Journal came out with a timeline of January 6th, and so did the New York Times. And the reason why they hate me is because I just add that one extra piece of information they leave out, right? They say that the Proud Boys are the orange hats, the Wall Street Journal, of the whole thing. Yeah, the Proud Boys was the key thing at all the key moments. That's the Wall Street Journal. Then the New York Times came out today or yesterday and said, no, you also have to throw in the Oath Keepers. Okay. Okay. And the only thing I throw in is I say, why did you guys leave out the fact that you have a black Cuban guy leading the white supremacists? Your whole reaction to this, the 11-foot fences with the concertina wire, the lockdown of our Capitol, everything with shaming Trump with a bill in the House, shaming Trump with a bill in the Senate, with immediately doing lie detector tests of everybody at Fort Belvoir, going to police departments and doing all this Night of the Long Knives with the police department, Night of the Long Knives with all these army, all completely dependent on the white supremacist foundation. Okay. Right. And when I say, wait a minute, guys, you forgot one thing. I'm just trying to be helpful. You forgot that your founder is a black white supremacist guy named Enrique Tarrio.
Oh my God.
Right. And I misquoted Peter Duke. I'll say it right here. I'll print my retraction. I've less than an hour ago. I misunderstood Peter's skepticism about Enrique Tarrio. He went down to Florida, and he filmed Enrique Tarrio in November, I believe, in Florida. Mm-hmm. And Addy Ads interviewed him that day, and I spoke to Peter and he picked me up at the LAX that day. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about it and just laughing, having a kind of a good laugh. We hadn't seen each other. And I think it was the day after the election. And it was November 5th. And we were just laughing, like this Cuban guy and he's black. And oh my God, they'll have us believe anything, right?
George, this sounds like an excellent premise for a Super Bowl halftime show. There's going to be an Enrique Tarrio extravaganza, part Latino, part African American, just like last year, because these are the two groups that the MSM and the controllers are trying to put forward. Jay-Z is gonna put that show on the 50-yard line. I predict, because you both know that I have psychic abilities.
And you also
part Latino, part black.
You speak South Central Los Angeles as well, so you can go both ways here. You can go Cuban and you can go black.
Right.
Yeah. But that's the thing that they hate so much. I don't disagree with any other reporting. Mm-hmm. They add that one piece that totally destroys the whole sandcastle.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what they hate. And they now it's out, that he's an FBI informant. There's no doubt about it, right? Mm-hmm. Pull up Tarrio, would you, Andy? Enrique Tarrio, and then the word informant, and no one doubts this. Now, then I say, well, okay. The second guy who I interviewed at Trump Hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue is Joe Biggs, and he was involved in a big false flag operation in Afghanistan. I interviewed him directly. I have a picture. Somebody said I was the leader of this operation because I was so close to interviewing all the people involved in this operation. That's ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. I asked him, were you embedded with Stanley McChrystal? Yes. Were you embedded with him in Afghanistan? Yes. I bought him a beer. I set him up with the two easy questions. I said, are you for psychological operations? He almost spit his beer out. He didn't have an answer. He was like, oh my God. No, to me, if somebody said, are you for psych ops? I'd go, no. That's an easy question. I knew when he almost spit his beer that, why can't you just say no? Take a sip and go,
George, no. I've been really waiting to ask you some digging deeper on the question that encounter with Joe Biggs. I'd like to know the names because, the beauty is in the detail, right? I want to know the bar and the date and how you arranged the meeting, because this should be part of this book.
Yeah.
This article for the Columbia Journalism Review. All the details. God is in the details, right?
Everyone will remember this before they destroyed my channel, but the gals who lived on the border, and I can't remember the city that was the border town, but these people were saying, hey, there's automatic rifle fire every night. And I was interviewing all these ladies that had come to Washington, D.C., and they were going to the White House the next day, and Trump had put them all up at these Latino women, had put them all up at the Trump Hotel. And I was with a person who I will remain nameless, but has a lot of relatives that are in government, and that person can come forward. But there's a picture of it. And that person accused me of running the orange hats through the gate. Okay. So I'm just saying that it wasn't me that did that operation. And this operation was done by Joe Biggs for Psych Ops. Wow. Now they hate that. They hate that because Adam Schiff is going to be going up 2 days from now. And he's going to be saying, or 3 days from now, and he's going to say, Trump is the leader of the white supremacists. Trump encouraged all these poor Proud Boys to go down from the Washington Monument down to crash that gate. And we have pictures of them at the Washington Monument at 1 o'clock, a mile away from that gate, right? And so these are the things, these are the kneecap busting, narrative kneecap busters, the crush points. And it's going to destroy Adam Schiff's an opening statement. It's going to, all Trump has to do is have shown his lawyer, just all he has to do is have him mention these things. Well, how many informants are there in the Proud Boys? Well, that's a conspiracy theory. Well, let's start with your leader, Tarrio. You got at least one. What else aren't you telling us about? We had to go for this guy who's a YouTube journalist to tell us that. Where's the other guy? Where's your other guy that interviewed Joe Biggs? You know, and is he? I mean, how many guys in there? How many oath keepers are FBI informants? So these are the questions that need to be asked at the impeachment, because the whole case, the whole foundation lays at this white supremacist, that these were white supremacists and that Trump incited them. If they hadn't got to the gate and Trump was still speaking, and I have interviews, witnesses, films, testimonials, then Trump didn't do it. And it was actually FBI and Fourth Psych Ops that did it. Yeah. So let's put the blame where it should belong. There they are. There they are, walking down from the Washington Monument at 1 o'clock after the speech was over. They're not at the gates, guys. And there's Joe Biggs. Somebody said Joe Biggs is the third on the right with the gray flannel shirt. Somebody said, no, he walked right by you. You know, in that film that Andy was about to show, he walked right by you. How the hell could he walk right by me? I'm 1 o'clock going in with the gates, and there's Joe Biggs standing right there by the Washington Monument, right there.
Right.
And I should add a little rejoinder saying, that's journalism, Columbia.
Well, MSM has this Ginsu knife marketing approach. They said, okay, we have this Proud Boys piece of cutlery here. Then we got BLM, and they just keep adding, like, wait, there's more, right? But they neglected the paring knife. And that's where you come in, George. You cut right to the bone.
Yeah.
The Ginsu knife strategy failed, and you did a preemptive strike on their attack, or what they thought was going to be an attack. And you used the principles of mind-to-mind combat. And that cannot be defeated.
Truth is a lion. You just need to let it free. It doesn't need to be protected. And the truth is a lion.
Now, I have a find here for George, and in tribute to his father, Thomas OLoughlin. But I did some research because I have some background in reading Vietnam War history, and I picked up on your discovery, you know, on that fateful day of January 6th about the 4th PSYOP group. So I did some research from the time that you spoke about that, and I found an entire volume, an academic volume on psychological warfare during Vietnam. And the penultimate chapter, chapter 12 in this book, guess what the title is? The title is, and I sent them both to you earlier, maybe you haven't had a chance to look at it, but the title of this penultimate chapter is The 4th PSYOP Group in the Tet Offensive, Fall 1967. So can you see the historical continuity there?
Yes. And well, I better not go there.
Please.
Okay, I'll go there.
Yeah.
25th.
Bad influence.
Well, you are. There is a certain person with a beret, a NATO beret, that has it looks like the lightning bolts and the red kind of like palm leaf from the 25th Infantry Division out of Hawaii. And this group, I think, goes back all the way to World War II. I think they actually were on Bougainville with my dad when he was with the 45th Infantry Division, the Buckeye Division. So they're a storied group, but they also did they had chemical operations and biological operations in Vietnam. And like John has said before with his dad and so forth, the Phoenix program with Doug Valentine, these things that get tested out overseas, then come to America, COINTELPRO. Now, John Brennan is talking about domestic insurgents, and we need to take the same approach that we took in Afghanistan and Iraq against these domestic insurgents. Same exact surveillance.
Yeah. And Chalmers Johnson, the late professor of East Asian Studies, first at Berkeley, then UC San Diego, who I became acquainted with, he referred to this process in a series of books that he wrote, and John's acquainted with him. He refers to this process as blowback, which is a term that comes from chemical warfare, but it's the deal that you workshop these types of oppressive strategies overseas, you beta test them, and we think, great, we're saving America from the commies, right? The Chi-Com, whoever it is, and then it blows back to us, and that's where we're at here in 2021. That's blowback, classic Chalmers Johnson concept, blowback.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, I'll let you get a word in edgewise here. I'll take a rest. The defense rests.
That was not a defense, George. That was a prosecution.
Well, it was an indictment of the journalism, but it's also a defense of Donald Trump. And it's a defense of every American, the 2 million Americans who came there just to exercise their First Amendment right to just let their senator know that they wanted to look into at least 4 hours of debate on the vote. And then to have all these psyop groups come in is bad. And if they aren't psyop groups, what are the psyop guys doing leading these groups?
Yeah. Well, can I interject something? There's a concept that can be useful. It's a shorthand, but there's a whole literature on this, and it comes from the military, and it comes from marketing. Because remember, Edward Lansdale was Colonel Edward Lansdale before he got into psyops in Philippines and then in Vietnam. He was an advertising man, right? Mm-hmm. So they kind of go together. But it's called perception management. Ladies and gentlemen, perception management. So you try to occupy the high ground in the perception management. You're engineering it, and you're putting all the different elements together. Unfortunately, they're dealing with a person who's highly skilled in network analysis. He did it for a living, and he was very successful at it. And he happens to be right here sitting there with John O'Loughlin on this show. They didn't see that. That's the X factor that always screws up the best laid plans of these authoritarians. And it's a delight to be experiencing this in real time. Now, I'm not going to do a victory dance ahead. They might have something in store, like some sort of terror attack. They might start spraying through aerosols the pigs, because I'm hearing chatter now that they're going to attack farm animals, like I talked about a few months ago, to get into the food supply, because they're pretty much tired with dicking with the human population. So now they're going to go to large agricultural livestock. So it's called perception management, and I have this session that I ran yesterday, and one of the participants of what I call Professor Hamamoto office hours, which is really a graduate seminar, because everybody's bringing their own insights and material into it. But I sent an article out there, and she picked up immediately that there was a master's thesis written on perception management. And let's see who. It was done for the Naval Postgraduate School. And you've mentioned the Naval Postgraduate School many times, George. It's based in Monterey, California. And by the way, there's a Cal State now that's on the old military installation. It's called Cal State Monterey. And the thesis is titled Perception Management, subtitle A Core I/O Capability. And it's published September 2007. And the author of it has kind of caught my attention. It says Khyber Zaman, Z-A-M-A-N, and he's got his thesis co-advisors. So the participant in the office hours / seminar checked the report documentation page, which approves it for public dissemination. And she picked up immediately that this individual was not even an American national, who he's studying and writing a thesis at the U.S. Naval Postgraduate School. And guess which nation of which he's a citizen? One of the favorite, the Belt Road. Pardon me?
Iran?
Close.
Saudi Arabia.
One more guess. And it has to do with a person who used to play video games in the Capitol. And they said, hey, come into my office.
Oh, Andre Carson.
Yes. Okay, this person. This person, yes, this guy here who's writing a thesis on perception management at the U.S. Naval training area here, a master's thesis. He's a Pakistani national.
Yeah, Zaman. Yeah.
So, yes. So we're seeing this fusion, all these different PSYOPs, strategic perception management exercises are being laid in place all over the world.
Yeah, I better stop talking. I'm kind of just gushing out things that, I think the world needed to know. Like you mentioned, I was making a lot of money, doing very well, thank you, in network analysis. I didn't choose this. I got forced upon me. The last thing I want to do is run all around and do all this stuff. But I feel like I have no choice. And I feel like John made that same decision. You made that same decision. Mm-hmm. And that's how we roll. I have nothing to gain, right? Put yourself in my shoes. Our first show, you talked about the charrette where it kind of got blown up, and you and Ron Schofield had done all these cards. We were going to do these index cards. It was all going to be about Kolomoisky and dark weapons and how the U.S. and CIA moved the dark weapons to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, this guy who John has met, but you haven't met him yet. I don't think you've met the reporter, the White House reporter that we had there. No, and he comes at me with this story saying the Japanese foreign minister says these these athletes at the NATO games from the United States brought the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, what's going on there? He goes, well, they want all the medical records. They want to track down coronavirus. It's affecting the whole world. It's going to shut down the whole world. They're trying to get to the patient zero. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Well, first question I asked him, why don't they just test everybody? Just send them all the tests. They don't need to give them all the medical records. Just test everybody and send them the medical records. Isn't that what they're doing with us? The TSA just came out with an announcement today. You can't ride a bus, plane, go in any kind of airport, any kind of transportation hub unless you've been tested or wearing a mask. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're forcing everybody to either get a vaccine in the health industry, the law enforcement industry, and if you work for the government, if you want to start going into Washington, D.C., and it's going to pretty soon be all the major cities and all the state capitals, and we're going to limit your access if you don't, right? So what's the big deal? Just take the test, right? If you want to really make a conspiracy theorist look bad, you just go out and get a test. Hey, I've been tested. Here's the negative results. You're wrong. Okay. It would have been that simple. $30, I think, free test, right? And so are we or are we not? Why was the US government not doing everything we could to try to help, right? You would think, and that's when I start looking, when I start seeing deep state shadow play here and they start really forcing back. Like they go get 60 Minutes and they go get CNN to go after me, right? Even though I'm the one who's getting the death threats, and they reverse it around to say somehow I'm encouraging bad things to happen to people. Why are they doing that when they just could get a test? They say, well, we're asymptomatic. I just heard Dr. Fauci say half the people who have it are asymptomatic. Why wouldn't you be trying to get to the bottom of it? I just couldn't figure that out. I was like, hey, maybe there's something more to this. And I started looking into it. And that's how journalism should be. You should be trying to ask those questions and knock down the rumor. But then when the rumor, there's no logical explanation for why they're behaving in such a way, then you have to start looking into it.
And appropriately enough, the loop is closed. The narrative loop is closed as of January 6, 2021. There was a direct line that connected that psyops with that final moment, that decisive moment. And you picked down it, to the untrained eye, even to those people who are supposedly journalists, it looks like just a mass of people. But you've been following, Kolomoisky, about the Clockwork Orange, right? The orange hats, and all these different elements that you call data points that all came to area that capital
real time.
In real time.
I immediately said orange hats. I immediately walked over to the grassy knoll where they formed up, and see the Proud Boys with Joe and those guys were there earlier in the morning. They filmed it at like 9 o'clock in the morning. There was nobody anywhere. You can tell 2 million people were there when I was there, right? So there's people everywhere, flags everywhere. So the video they're shooting now is the early morning video. You can see there's nobody at the Capitol, right? That's how I know that video is not when they say it was. And that's how I saw the people come out of that Louisiana Avenue right there. I don't know if they came out of the Teamster building or whatever, but they quickly crossed the street there and formed up on that grassy knoll, and then all locked arms, and then started yelling F Antifa, and then they went right through that gate. So it wasn't Joe and those guys. So I asked myself, why are you lying? Why are you lying? Addie was right next to me. Georgia Peach was right next to me. Why would you lie? Why are you telling a fib? Why? Why not just say it wasn't until 1:15 and we crashed it with our guys to make the Trump people look bad? Why don't they just come out and say it?
Mm-hmm. And all those videos are time stamped, correct? So that people can get the proper chronology. Yeah,
and my best friend, a lot of people said you should do a timeline and chronology. I said, no, just wait. Wall Street Journal will do one, New York Times will do one, and then I won't change a thing. I'll just add that little drop of truth that they left out. And you can see here in the morning at 9 o'clock when they film, there's nobody there. There's nobody there. Now this is later, but watch this shot. With this, that is when they're walking away from the Capitol. But in the morning, look at this. They're walking down by the task force bells. There's nobody there. Mm-hmm. So if this wasn't the whole world resting on whether this is true or not, whether Joe was there, look at that. There's nobody there. You could see the obelisk, the thing in the background where I was. There's nobody there.
Yeah.
So this was shot at like 9 o'clock in the morning. And they're trying to pass this off like this was at 1 o'clock. Sorry, there was 2 million people there at 1 o'clock. And I'm not overstating this. Mm-hmm. This is the case for Adam Schiff 3 days from now. His opening statements is based on this was white supremacy, not psyops. Mm-hmm. So you have to make a choice out there. And if they're lying to you, like if a lawyer is presenting a lie and presenting witnesses that lie, that's not good for the case. That's what's happening. Look at that picture. There's nobody. That's right in front of the Teamsters. There's nobody there around him. Nobody.
Mm-hmm. They're milling. They're not even mustering. They're milling.
They're milling.
Milling behavior, right?
12 of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, Adam Schiff's people must be desperate after seeing your report. They must be. Adam Schiff's people must be huddling with Jay-Z's people to figure out how they're going to rewrite this, right? Because this is for all the marbles. This is bigger than the Super Bowl, of course, but they're going to try. So in that vein, what do you anticipate, George, that Adam Schiff, the failed B-movie screenwriter, is going to attempt in order to get over on you? Because they're gonna do a counter move.
Watch this next shot when they look down Independence Avenue, and you'll see how bare it is in about 2 seconds. This is Joe. There's task force. Look at that. There's nobody there. Nobody there. Nobody.
Wow. There's shoot a cannon down the street and hit nobody.
There's nobody there, right? There was 2 million people there. That was full of people. You can ask Addie, walk down with me. I was live streaming, and you can ask Georgia Peach. That's psyop. That's a psyop right there. Okay. So now what do I anticipate? Well, I anticipated that once we blew up Proud Boys, they would have to go to a diffusion strategy, which was, well, it wasn't just the Proud Boys. So our whole argument doesn't just depend on them. There's all these other white supremacist groups too. Like, let's talk about Oath Keepers. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to talk about Oath Keepers? That plays right into Joe again. Wasn't Joe down there at the ranch? Wasn't Joe down there at the ranch with the, I can't remember the family's name right now, in Nevada?
The Finnecums?
Well, Finnecum was a guy who got shot in the back, but the folks that they were with, all of a sudden I can't remember the name.
Skips. Yeah, I can't remember either.
But there was an Oregon.
There was a standoff, right? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah.
Yeah. I think Joe was there. I mean, it's like
the Bundy family.
Yeah.
Bundy.
They forgot the flag that said fourth psyops. They forgot the flag that said fourth psyops.
Right.
See, I mean, look, I mean, I don't want to spill everything and get people in trouble, but I keep saying it and everybody keeps doubting me. So I keep adding more detail. Christopher Stevens was a pilot. Remember Christopher Stevens, the one who died in Benghazi? Okay. Most people didn't know he was a pilot. We went and looked him up, saw he was a pilot. Christopher Stevens lived by this drug lab in Holland. Most people don't associate Christopher Stevens with Holland and any kind of bioweapons development lab. That's maybe a proxy for Fort Detrick. Okay. People don't know that bioweapons were used in Libya. Okay. They don't know that bioweapons were used. MERS was used in Egypt, where they had the breakout there. They had SARS breakout across the top shelf of Africa. But Christopher Stevens was in both places, right, as a pilot flying around, and they were trying to cover for this. Now, if somebody came to you and said, well, you know, your understanding of this whole thing isn't quite what you think. We actually have this group over there, and they come over here and they test viruses and vaccines all the time. And they bring over people and they give us stuff, and we test it over here. We test it over here. It's administered by NATO. That way we wash our hands of it. We don't have to keep any records. And that's how it's done. Right. And
it's called MERS, by the way, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome.
Yeah, that was the Egypt one that he supposedly did. But there was SARS also.
Oh.
The original SARS was used in Iraq, I believe. SARS 1. And then there was a variant of the MERS as well that I'm forgetting. And then there was an Ebola in Africa as well, 2014.
Right.
And there was this one group. You want to talk about the British banking interests, and you want to talk about Rhodes, and Rhodes was funding it, right, through this Wellcome Trust. His favorite buddy, his Henry Wellcome guy, was Mr. Spray, Mr. Bioweapon, right? And they had a foundation in Germany called the Duisburg Foundation that was funding all this stuff. Muhammad Atta got some money. This is Bayer, right, funding all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. What, you know, you're a doctor where? Fort Belvoir. Oh, okay. Where else? Oh, all the Army bases. You know, there's about 8 of them that test this thing. But the first 2 ones where it gets started, attenuated, is Fort Detrick. Fort Bethesda Naval Hospital and Walter Reed is one of them. And then the other one is Fort Belvoir. Well, here's Imran Awan sending terabytes to Pakistan. Imran Awan has a trading number, a DLA trading number, Defense Logistics Agency trading number there at Fort Belvoir, right? Taggart and all them are at Fort Belvoir, living there. Then they go on to work at Bethesda. So I'm like, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on here that doesn't make a lot of sense, you know? So, like I say, why wouldn't they just do the coronavirus test and be done with it, right? So I can't risk the world getting hit with this psyop, and maybe also in combination with a bioweapon, maybe 4 or 5 bioweapons in a lockdown to destroy our economy, right? When I'm following a legitimate story. You have to balance that out. And that's what journalism is supposed to be about, the public's right to know versus the right of the individual for privacy and et cetera. And at some point, and I write about this in the book, the balance tipped for me and said, look, if the only cost over here is to take a damn test and answer that versus we lose all retail and Amazon and Walmart get all retail in America, we all lose our jobs, we lose everything, a way of life, we lose our freedoms, all of our the full slate of constitutional rights. You have to make these decisions, right? And it was a gut-wrenching decision, but I made it, and I took the heat for it, and I stand by the decision. So I'm sorry, that was a long rant, but
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Because we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary and that fateful turn at the charrette Mystery Island, let's call it. But John, George alluded to the Netherlands, to Holland, right, as part of this international. And you've been reading And those of you who are not following, you need to listen to be brought up to speed with the historical the backstory of all of what's taking place here. But George alluded to the role of the Netherlands, and you've been reading from Jim Mars's the Fourth Reich, right? Sort of the
well, more recently, I've been reading from Population Control.
There you go.
Corporate Owners Are Killing Us by Jim Mars, which was his last book before he died.
Mm-hmm. So the question I have is, do you recall the connection with the Netherlands, with Dutch? Because the Dutch people, because we know there's a connection there with Eric Prince, and there's a historical connection with banking, and there's also a journalistic connection with some former Nazis, quote unquote former Nazis. They went to Latin America as part of the exfiltration after World War II. This is the Sasson brothers, for example. So anyway, could you?
Well, Prince Bernhard is the place to look. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands was in fact an SS officer, and I think his actual nobility was German and not Dutch, but he married, I think he married the Queen, or was it Queen Wilhelmina? Anyway, he became the head of the Dutch government in exile, fled to London, and was kind of just inherited the Dutch government and ran it, after World War II for a long time. He is if I recall correctly, he is the founder of the Bilderberg Group. And so all you need to do is say Bilderberg Group, and that brings in all of the European usual suspects.
I see.
So that's the main connection, I would say. And of course, you're aware, of course, of the merger of Royal Dutch Shell with British Petroleum, and all of that is Dutch. The Dutch influence goes back to William of Orange in 1688. Mm-hmm. Dutchmen took over the kingdom of England.
There's a famous rock star, a guitarist, a virtuoso who died recently, who's an Indonesian American. His name is Edward Van Halen, right? Van Halen is a Dutch name, but as you're speaking, I recall that was their major overseas colonial possession. And going off George, I think they were using poison gas on the population there, because they said, well, there's a communist uprising there. This is when Indonesia was called Dutch Indonesia. And of course, there's all these, Royal Shell, right? There's all these oil deposits and other precious minerals, substances that are there. But they had this colony, and they were using these exterminationist tactics on the Indonesian people. JFK and Dulles.
This book arrived in the mail today, and it's funny you should mention Indonesia. JFK versus Allen Dulles, Battleground Indonesia.
Wow.
By Dr. Greg Poulgrain. So, and introduction by Oliver Stone. Afterward by James D. Eugenio. That is going to be fun. And the whole idea of this chess game of JFK versus Allen Dulles comes to life in my father's case in the most serious way. So to have an author here has put it together around the idea of Indonesia. And one of the things I picked up quickly from the book was that Allen Dulles was well aware of the potential riches of Indonesia ever since back in 1920, when he had studied about that. And so he had his eye on Indonesia for his whole career, kind of just back in the back of his mind, if I ever get a chance to grab it. So then who else do we talk about when we talk about Indonesia would be the parent, the husband of Barack Obama's mother, Sotero. And that connects you to some really ugly stuff that was going on at the behest of the CIA when they tried and failed to generate a revolution there with the commitment of mercenaries and all kinds of stuff. Well, that tragedy goes on. So I'm going to have to read the book before I can say much more about it. But, Indonesia, yesterday we were talking about Burma for the first time, I think, ever. And now Indonesia comes up. Indonesia, of course, the site of a lot of battles in World War II in which MacArthur's fleet, the 7th Fleet, was engaged. And my dad was involved in those as well as George's dad.
Mm-hmm. And this is right in keeping with George's focus on the Belt and Road. This whole region is going to be contended, fought over in subtle ways, or quote unquote small wars today here in 2021. This is what they're gearing up for. And that's why we keep hearing this rhetoric about the Chi-Coms all the time, to kind of immobilize us into to revive these historic decades-long hates and paranoia, xenophobia, if you want to call it that. But yeah, it was Barack Obama's mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, who was a second-generation intelligence asset. Her father was CIA in Hawaii, and the mother was an asset, I believe. And she was trained at the University of Hawaii East-West Center, which is CIA, as an anthropologist. And she went there, and she was because she was mated. That's how these families work. They're set up with couples and power couples, as you know, like Bill Clinton and Hillary Rodham, right, and Michelle Robinson and Barack Hussein Obama. But she was sent to Indonesia, and she met this promising scholar / politician, Lolo Sotoro, and Barry Obama took that name, and he studied several years at madrasas, and his Arabic was said to be at the level of fluency. But Stanley Ann Dunham, as a quote unquote anthropologist, and we know that anthropology has a close history with overseas empire, and that was pioneered again by the British anthropologists, all the Egyptologists. They were the ones that really pioneered the anthropological sciences, as well as France, as an adjunct also of intelligence. And that's what Stanley Ann Dunham was doing there. And early on, her spawn, Barack Hussein Obama, was being cultivated to eventually ascend to the presidency. It's a long-term, decades-long screenplay that was written by Adam Schiff Sr., perhaps. Who knows? Or Dr. Seuss might have come up with that one.
Peter Strzok Sr.
Yes.
I think there was a plan to do Kenya, have him be the president of Kenya.
Right.
Why they had the kind of creation myth with the Kenyan father. I believe the whole story about Obama, though, being born in Mombasa at CIA base, it makes him an American. So there's a birth certificate. So I believe I'm not one of these birthers. I think he was born on American soil. But his mother worked in Sialkot and up there in the Kashmir, this whole Belt and Road corridor. And I don't do all Belt and Road. I just do the Biden Belt and Road. So what we're doing is charting just where the blackberries show up on the Belt and Road. And you have to have Rothschild Energy there, and you have to have the CEFC there, which Bob Ulinsky said was the blackberries were the key encrypted device for the CEFC. So if you say Hunter Biden isn't there, I'm probably not going to cover it too much. If CEFC is not there, if Rothschild Energy is not there, I'm probably not going to cover it. And it's mostly going to be the stands. We're going to so we started with Uzbekistan. Addie had been there. We're moving to Kazakhstan. We're going to talk about the stands and how the PAC-ISI was used to subdue the stands. And that's the Biden Belt and Road. And, who knows? We may pick up, Djibouti, and some of our friends who like to do that, death threats. And we may pick up Djibouti in this because Djibouti is a key hub. They're at the Gulf of Oman, going up through the Red Sea there. That's a choke point in the Belt and Road. So who knows who will, and guess where it ends? It goes through Duisburg, right? And ends in Rotterdam. And they get so close to that Duisburg Institute, and they get so close to that. The one thing I failed to mention is when somebody tells you a lab, And it turns out later that that lab has a unique strain of coronavirus. That's a little bit odd, right? Not only does the Dutch they worked with South Africa to develop these bioweapons in South Africa to subdue the population. Mm-hmm. The Wellcome Trust did the response for Ebola. They did this response for SARS, MERS, dengue fever, all these hemorrhagic fevers.
Anthrax.
They did anthrax. Mark Kulak came out with a blockbuster, and they took him down off Twitter because of it, because he connected Sina Bavari to the anthrax guy that was at the Duisburg Foundation at the University of Delaware, Bruce Ivins, the guy that they pinned anthrax 2001, mm-hmm. because they didn't want to have another Warren Commission. They didn't want a Warren Commission for this one, for 9/11, so they poisoned all the people in Congress and then they blamed it on Bruce Ivins. Bruce Ivins was the whistleblower. Mm-hmm. So Mark got thrown off of Twitter because of that. And he said, I'm not backing down. This is fact. I mean, these guys are connected. So citizen journalism's not maybe winning here. We sure are making it a 15-rounder.
Absolutely. And there is literature immediately comes to mind as a really good study. And it was done by true investigative journalists, not the hacks that we see coming out of the Columbia School of Journalism or Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern, or out of even UC Berkeley, which used to have an excellent journalism school. And the book is called Anthrax Wars. That is a canonical text so far as the bacteriological and chemical warfare complex is concerned. And I think there's a straight line that does in that particular book. Now that I think of it, it connects what's going on in the Netherlands with South African. And of course, it goes back probably to the Boer War, right, historically.
And Andy, I'm sorry I didn't give you a warning on this, but this is the Erasmus Lab. And the EMC version of coronavirus is the Erasmus Lab. The novel, they have the one and the only EMC version of the coronavirus.
Where does this come out of, Erasmus?
Erasmus is out of it's Rotterdam, in Rotterdam.
Okay, the reason you just confirmed something that I suspected. This is kind of a joke being thrown in our face. Erasmus was Dutch. He was a philosopher, right? So they're saying, yeah, here, take this.
Well, he also was a humanist, and he also was a Puritan, not Puritan, but his ideas led to this Calvinist idea of we're the chosen ones.
Election.
Right. And and it wasn't, he introduced predestination, I think, and humanism, right, with the Erasmus writings and so forth. Mm-hmm. And this is the thread of the rationalization for bioweapons. We are the chosen ones. We came up with this. We came up with a vaccine that makes us the chosen ones by definition. We came up with a virus. We attenuated it back to the vaccine that proves we're the ones who should survive the spraying. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm-hmm. John, you look like you're ready to jump out of your seat.
I'm fascinated. I don't want to jump in because you guys are making so much progress, and I think it's crucial. And I as we recognize the fact that this purge is just getting started, I think we also have to recognize that this channel too is vulnerable and may be taken down at any time. I'm going to keep on publishing the truth as best as I can, and I'm not going to restrict opinions to those that I think fit with the official narrative being foisted upon us. So the result is going to be obvious. We're either going to survive or they're going to take us down and further squelch the free speech and the rational views that we're trying to present here. Mm-hmm. But I want to just, because we're running out of time, I've been hoping to toss this in and see what happens. Harry the Greek reported that the Wisconsin vote fraud case is now in front of the Supreme Court, and that there's a status conference on February 19th, and some procedures to start on February 22nd. And I said, what the heck is that about? And I looked at it, and I opened up what he's published there, and he's published it on brassballs.blog. And you can get a link there to the petition filed by President Trump and his legal team. It's 200 pages long. And if you look through it, it is the Wisconsin voter fraud case. So, it's so valuable. Like, people are saying to me, John, if they have voter fraud, why can't they prove it? Well, I could say now, here, look at this. This is the proffer in front of the Supreme Court, and it's going to be heard on February 19th. And not heard, but lined up a status conference to try to do a scheduling conference. So that prompted me to ask Harry off, and I said, "Well, Harry, that's just Wisconsin. Is that the only thing that's at stake here?" And he said, "No." He said, "Pennsylvania is also open. The case is still ongoing." And so what I'm thinking is, maybe there's enough legal cases in Arizona. I think has still got an active fight going on. Is it still possible that President Trump might get a win from the Supreme Court based on the finally getting the merits in front of the court instead of having to rule on issues of standing and procedure as they did the first time? It's not impossible, unless it may be mathematically impossible. I haven't ruled that out, but this is what I'm thinking: is that Daryl, these intelligence agencies know what's going on here. They know what's going on. They know that this is fifth dimensional chess. And I would say that the placing of these troops in the Capitol and the militarizing of that zone there can be seen as a chess move. And now you've got the option in the Supreme Court that if they want to, the people behind the scenes can let Trump win in the Supreme Court because they control all the pieces, right? We assume that they control John Roberts and enough, to do what they want to. So if that's the case, are we being set up here to have a divided government that half the country says, I go with the House of Representatives and the president is Joe Biden, and then the Supreme Court says, no, the president is Donald Trump. And that is how they bring down the country, by dividing us in an unescapable conflict.
Well, I'll have a crack at that. I think these psyops like Q and so forth are meant to divert energy away from citizen journalism. Trust Barr, trust Sessions, trust Nate Kane, trust Huber, trust, Horoscope, whatever. So you won't be looking for Joe Biggs and trying to determine at what time that is. And you won't be trying to break their narratives. And the reason why I don't put much hope in this is because I see Trump, the Judicial Committee in the House today, put forth a letter requesting Trump testify. Right. So they're going to be cross-examining Trump, and they're moving that up right now. And they're moving these censure things through the Congress at record speed, and they're pushing this off. And legal cases, John, they can always continue them. And then 5 years from now, oh yeah, there was 6 votes, So and I've said this all along for 4 years through this Q thing. When I sued the DNC, Q came out like a week later, right? They don't want people jumping on this train. And they don't want the citizen journalism thing to succeed. And they use these hopium strategies to keep people from engaging themselves. And I'm sorry, but this is a lean forward game. It isn't a lean back and, watch it all happen, passive game. And I've been saying it for 4 years, and I think it's going to be the answer. But Daryl, I'll let you have the last crack.
Yeah, very quickly. I agree. I've followed Harry the Greek's work since he came to prominence, thanks to you, George and John, and he's susceptible to hopium from his past actions, and I think this is another example of being Pechenic. This is no reflection on Harry the Greek as such. He does great work.
Yeah.
But we are being Pechenicked here. There's going to be another Duper's Delight moment after this doesn't happen either.
Duper's Delight, people are calling me and saying, Dr. Hamamoto's got it right. Pechenick always has Duper's Delight. He always has that little, snake smile curl out of the side of his mouth. A lot of people compare this to Erasmus, right? I hate to say the Erasmus pilgrimage, inspired the pilgrims and their self-righteousness. But where do we find Erasmus taking the Twilight bark, right, over to England? And who is he meeting with? Walsingham, Elizabeth Spymaster. And what's the number one way Walsingham shapes the future of the English monarchy going forward? Poisoning, right? Yeah. And that's why Shakespeare writes about it in Code and talks about it in all the plays and sonnets as a way of trying to, he's completely trapped. So he has to speak in codes and get out of the current time frame to get to the people to send these messages. Look at these guys now with Dyneport and all the poisoning with Novichok. Look at Christopher Steele. They're still shaping the battlefield and still shaping the way the chessboard is laid out with poison. Coronavirus is just one of the many in the panoply of things in their rainbow that they've got.
Wow, the continuity of treachery through the ages.
More than one trip between Walsingham and Erasmus.
Yes.
That's a long voyage back then. I mean, that was back in the wooden boat. Spanish Armada, everybody dies. So this was a big deal to go over there and make these secret trips. There had to be a reason. I think it was this kind of Knights of Malta kind of thing is, hey, let's get together here, Church of England, this Puritan movement, let's poison.
By the way, the Knights of Malta had an active presence in the state of Louisiana. I'm just telling you this because you're going to go down to New Orleans to have a charrette. And I sent that doc. I'll send it to you, but I sent it to Tyrone as well because I'd like him to start going into these older roots because we're really fighting these battles with the empires here on American soil, right here in the 21st century. So the examples you bring in, George, about these stealth visits on a bark through these shallow draft rivers and streams in order to create empire and to build it, to extend it, it's right on the mark.
And I thought I'd throw in a little bit. I studied Erasmus this much, so that's one thing I remembered.
You got a good education in Miami of Ohio, I'll tell you that much, George.
There you go.
George, you've kind of crushed my vision of Erasmus there. I was really into him as a humanist, and now you've placed him as a murderous spy that enabled the evil empire of Great Britain to take over the world. Well, geez.
Oh, well, I'll handle another one then. It wasn't Peter Paul Rubens or Vermeer, but who painted Night Watch? Maybe
Rembrandt. Yeah. Rembrandt. Yeah.
Night Watch was a protection racket.
Oh.
It was all the chosen ones going around and smashing everyone else's businesses, just like coronavirus, right?
Kristallnacht.
Yeah, it was Kristallnacht. Night Watch is Kristallnacht. Look at all of them. They've all got the baseball bats and clubs, and they're the most prosperous businessmen.
And they're all rogue.
Night Watch. Check it out.
All right.
That's right. And it's the Venetian system, where they're the stadtholders, and the stadtholders bound together, and it's like a cartel. There is not going to be room for any more stadtholders. So you'll find out if you apply, and we'll show you the door with our clubs. Okay. Great, George. Great, Professor. Another night just flew by here at McDuff Lives. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock for a Minefields. And wanted to just let everybody know to get ready for the 27th of February, Saturday morning at 11. Doug Valentine has agreed to come back on the show. So start thinking of things we want to ask him about. I'm really looking forward to that. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.